The night air inside the studio carried a quiet electricity, the kind that made people hold their breath without realizing it. The crowd settled into their seats with the usual mix of excitement and impatience, waiting for the next contestant to step into the glow of the stage lights. No one expected anything extraordinary. It was supposed to be just another audition, another hopeful voice among thousands. But destiny has its own sense of timing, and it chose this moment to speak through a boy who had almost given up on being heard. He walked out slowly, barefoot in worn-out slippers, wearing a white shirt faded from too many hand washings. His name was Eli, a 14-year-old Filipino boy whose small frame was overshadowed by the massive stage behind him. He held a cheap, scratched guitar, one that looked as though it had lived through a lifetime of songs before it ever reached his hands. The judges exchanged curious glances. One of them leaned forward, trying to understand the expression on Eli's face. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper, a kind of quiet determination you only see in someone who has learned to be brave even when it hurts. When they asked him what brought him here, he cleared his throat and answered softly. "I want to sing for my mama," he said. "She used to hum songs to me, so I wouldn't hear her crying at night. I want to make her proud." He said it like a confession, not like a performance introduction, and the room shifted. People stopped scrolling their phones. The judges leaned in. Something about the cracked honesty in his voice demanded respect. Back home in a small coastal town, life hadn't been kind to Eli. His father had left when he was little, leaving his mother to raise him alone. She worked long hours in a laundry shop, coming home with aching shoulders and fingers burned from hot irons. Still, she never complained. She kept the home warm with stories, laughter, and the few songs she remembered from her own childhood. She gave him everything she could accept, the one thing she wished she had, a better life. Eli grew up watching her sacrifice for him, and music became his way of thanking her. It was their secret world. On stormy nights, when the roof shook and the rain hammered like fists on metal, she would hum softly to soothe him. As he grew older, he learned to play those songs on a borrowed guitar from a neighbor who later gifted it to him after hearing him play. "You've got something special, kid," the neighbor said. "Don't waste it." Eli never forgot those words, but life grew harsher. His mother fell ill, the kind of illness that doesn't announce itself loudly but slowly steals strength day by day. Medical bills piled up faster than paychecks, and sometimes Eli skipped school to do small jobs around town, carrying sacks of rice, cleaning fishing nets, shining shoes. Anything that could buy medicine, anything that could help her breathe a little easier. Music, once his escape, faded into the background of survival. Then came the night she whispered, too weak to lift her head, "Don't stop singing, Eli. Your voice will take you where my hands can't." She squeezed his fingers and smiled with a courage he didn't understand until much later. Those words pushed him to try something impossible, auditioning for a televised talent show in the big city. He had no money for transportation, but the neighborhood pulled together what little they could. A fisherman's wife sold extra fish. A tricycle driver insisted on giving him a free ride to the bus station, and his schoolteacher gave him a small envelope with a simple message, "You belong on that stage." He carried their hope with him like a second heartbeat. Now he stood in front of the brightest lights he had ever seen. The judges waited. The audience waited. His hands shook as he positioned the guitar, fingers hovering above the strings. For a moment, he thought the fear would swallow him whole. But then he imagined his mother's smile, the one she tried so hard to hide when she was in pain, and the tremble in his hand steadied. He took a breath, and he began to play. The first chords of Hotel California drifted across the room, soft and haunting. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't perfect, but it carried something far more powerful. Soul, pure, unfiltered emotion poured out of him as though each note carried a piece of his story. The judges lifted their heads. The audience went silent. Eli's voice, gentle but steady, wrapped around the classic melody and transformed it into something new, something tender, aching, and profoundly human. Midway through the song, something unexpected happened. His voice cracked not from nerves, but from the weight of a memory hitting him too hard. He paused for just a second, his eyes glistening. The crowd held its breath, and then, with a strength that seemed too big for his small frame, he continued singing, his voice overflowing with everything he had ever held inside: love, longing, fear, and hope. By the time he reached the final chorus, tears were streaming down faces across the room. One judge brushed her cheek, trying and failing to hide how deeply she had been moved. Another leaned back, visibly shaken, whispering, "Where did this kid come from?" No one had an answer. It didn't matter. What mattered was the sound of his voice, filling the air like a promise. When the final note faded, the room erupted not in cheers at first, but in stunned silence. And then the applause hit like thunder. People stood, some clapped, some cried, some simply stared at him with a look usually reserved for miracles. Eli lowered his guitar, overwhelmed. He had never felt so exposed, yet never so seen. One judge spoke first, her voice thick with emotion. "Eli, you didn't just sing that song, you lived it." That was one of the most powerful moments we've ever had on this stage. Another judge stood up and, without waiting for anyone else, slammed the golden buzzer. The moment the golden confetti exploded above him, Eli froze. He looked up as the shimmering pieces rained down, reflecting the stage lights like falling stars. The crowd roared that all he could think of was his mother lying in their small home miles away, probably praying for him at this very moment. His knees buckled, and he covered his face, sobbing as the judges rushed to hug him. It wasn't just victory. It was validation. It was hope made visible. Backstage, producers and staff congratulated him, but he kept holding the golden ticket tight against his chest. Later, when he finally reached for his phone and called home, he could barely speak. His mother answered weakly, but when he whispered, "Ma, I did it," she let out a small, soft laugh, the kind he hadn't heard in months. "I knew you would," she said. "You've always been my miracle." Word about Eli's performance spread quickly. Viewers across the USA shared the clip, praising not just his talent, but his humility and courage. Donations poured into the show's inbox from strangers wanting to help with his mother's treatment. Messages of support came from nurses, teachers, single mothers, veterans, retirees, ordinary people, moved by an extraordinary boy. For the first time in his life, Eli felt the world wasn't just watching him, it was holding him up. Eli's journey wasn't over, but something inside him had already changed. He understood now that kindness could come from unexpected places, that hardship could shape someone without breaking them, and that one act of courage, taking one chance, singing one song, could shift the entire direction of a life. As he lay in bed that night in the show's dormitory, the golden ticket beside him, he imagined the future. He imagined helping his mother walk without pain, imagined finishing school, imagined a home where the sound of music wasn't an escape, but a celebration. And as he drifted to sleep, he whispered a promise to himself. He would use this second chance not just for his own dreams, but for every person who believed in him when they had nothing to give but love. In a world that often feels too loud, too fast, too divided, Eli's voice reminded everyone of something simple and timeless, that hope can rise from the unlikeliest places, that compassion can turn strangers into family, and that sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest truths. And in that studio on that unforgettable night, a poor Filipino boy didn't just sing a song, he sang the world awake.